is travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Murray, the A941 is partly blocked by an accident on Elgin Road at Lossiemouth, causing delays. In South Yorkshire, the A635 is closed each way between the Hickleton Crossroads and Marr after an accident yesterday evening. On Merseyside, the A580 East Lancs Road is closed westbound from the A58 at Haydock to the A571 at St Helens because of flooding with delays towards there. And as you divert, and train services are suspended between Crewe and Chester because of flooding. In Essex, the A12 is closed southbound between junctions 23 and 22 from Kelvedon South to Whittam North after an accident causing queues heading away from Colchester towards Chelmsford. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed eastbound for emergency repairs at junction 12, the M275 at Portsmouth, with queues from just before junction 10 at Wickham. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
We shot with the London Eye in the background, so it's quite an iconic shoot to do my cover of the Playboy magazine. So,
and you moved into the mansion for a while. Hugh called you the British Carmen Electra. You were one of his favourites, and it's renowned for its parties, of course. Over there, you must have had a few of those. Must have been wild times.
Fantastic parties, yeah. I mean, I met some incredible people. I will forever respect him and everyone at Playboy for the love and the support.
And you were on giant billboards, you were modelling for Nike, for Reebok, you're earning thousands of pounds a day.
Wow.
Absolutely like living the dream in terms of a model's lifestyle, and then things began to change.
Well, I've been living in Windsor for 4 years, and I can't get back into Windsor at the moment. The rents have gone ridiculous. I was paying $550 a month, and then the landlord just turned around one day and said I need to be paying $750. And I didn't really have a proper tenancy agreement, and I looked through it and I said, oh, can we get something in writing? And he was like, oh. So in the end, I wrote a tenancy agreement out from off the internet and I got it all signed. But then he went, if you're not going to pay the extra £250 a month, then you're going to have to move out. And I was like, well, you're going to have to give me 4 weeks. I can't just move out. I've got nowhere to go. And I think he thought he could just throw me out there and then. And he said, I've got someone that's going to move in that's going to pay £700-800 a month. So I went and got the 10, and I thought maybe this will be the way I can go for a few months or so, you know. And it was still summer a few months back when I became homeless. So, you know, I got the 10 and I got all the cooking equipment and what have you from the money I got from some of the jobs I did. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go and be a free spirit for a bit, and I'm gonna have to just do my own thing. And you know what? It was the biggest mental relief to be able to have my own space. I mean, that was so liberating. Absolutely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Morning, 9:30 on Thursday, the 17th of October, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, the news we're waking up to this morning, former One Direction star Liam Payne has died, aged just 31 years old. His body was found outside a hotel in Argentina after falling from a third-floor balcony.
Is that we know there's a budget tax rate incoming. We're being warned that Chancellor Rachel Reeves will be the biggest tax raiser in history, and it's provoking resistance within the Cabinet.
And is the HS2 actually going to be heading north? Ministers have apparently had a rethink on the HS2 train line, and it's expected that it will now run between London Euston and Crewe in the northwest. Do you think this is the right decision?
And are you one of those who's been hit by rising, soaring car insurance costs? Because prices in the UK increased 12 times as fast as France last year. The government's launching a review to find out why, but we're going to give you a clue. Think potholes.
And Plant Power for Patients health experts are calling on the NHS to make vegan food standard in our hospitals. If you were sick, how would you feel about being handed a plant-based by default menu? Sounds very unappealing.
Haven't they suffered enough being in hospital? And tonight, of course, the Conservative leadership contenders Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch go head-to-head in a GB News special at 7 p.m. Only here on GB News. You mustn't miss it.
Our very own Christopher Hope is, of course, hosting that debate this evening.
And we'll be speaking to him just after 10, because he'll be preparing rehearsing. It's a big moment. And
Yeah.
it's great for the channel that we've got it, because all the major broadcasters wanted it, but we've got it, and it's a very important moment in the Tory race to be leader. There's also a very interesting poll later, which we're going to share with you, which shows how well Reform are doing next compared to Labour.
Yeah, very, very well. Don't go anywhere. gbnews.com/your say. First for the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It's just after 9:30. Let's start with a recap of that news we've been covering, well, overnight and into this morning, that tributes are continuing to pour in for Liam Payne as fans and fellow stars are today remembering the former One Direction singer after his death in Buenos Aires at the age of 31. His career soared during his time in One Direction, but in recent years he did speak openly about struggles with mental health and addiction, admitting to hitting rock bottom. Social media has been flooded with tributes, with many sharing memories of his iconic performances and his personal struggles. Dermot O'Leary, who hosted Payne's X Factor debut, called him humble and said he loved to sing, while fans have been seen lighting candles outside the hotel where he sadly died. In other news, the government is pledging to match the first £100 million in public donations as 15 aid charities launch humanitarian appeals for the overwhelming need in Gaza, in Lebanon and the Middle East. The charities make up the Disasters Emergency Committee, which is raising urgent funds for millions in the region requiring food, water, shelter and medical care after fleeing their homes. The Development Minister, Annalise Dodds, says the suffering of civilians is intolerable and is urging the public to donate. Thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement signed today by the Defence Secretary John Healey at a NATO summit. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. Well, as NATO ministers are gathering in Brussels in the last few minutes, the Defence Secretary has said that that new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of what he called escalating global threats. Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government is pushing to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council estimates the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests that processing the backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. Well, it comes as Downing Street says it is committed to ending the use of asylum hotels, despite reports that the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. Kemi Badenoch says her bid for Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign, taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach in recent weeks. As the two contenders are competing to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain voters lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick has outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to pre-pandemic levels could help a tax cut. Well, from 7 p.m. tonight, they'll make their pitches to Tory members in a special programme here on GB News, moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. You can, of course, catch all of that action live here on the channel, 7 to 9 o'clock tonight in Decision Time, the race to lead. And finally, new weight loss jabs, touted as a potential boost for Britain's economy by getting people back into work, may also help treat alcohol addiction. Researchers in Chicago have found that the drugs like Ozempic reduced intoxication rates by 50% in individuals with alcohol use disorder. Experts believe those jabs, which target both appetite and brain functions related to addiction, could be a promising new treatment for both alcohol and opioid addiction. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Very good morning. Thank you for joining us. So, quite shocking news overnight. The death of anybody so young is attention-grabbing, but One Direction star Liam Payne has died aged just 31.
He fell from a third-floor balcony at a hotel in Buenos Aires and suffered extremely serious injuries.
He'd been in Argentina to support his former One Direction bandmate Neil Horan, who was performing on tour. He'd shared videos of himself dancing at the concert just days ago.
Fans are devastated, clearly, with many sharing memories of his performances and personal struggles because he'd had a history of battles with alcohol and drug abuse. In fact, he'd been in therapy for 6 months, I think, last year.
Yeah. Well, Ed Gleave is the TV and showbiz editor at The Daily Star. Good morning, Ed.
Morning.
Morning. The loss of Liam Payne probably affects different generations, actually. You know, my teenage girls this morning, it was all they could talk about at the breakfast table because, of course, he was so young and he burst into the public consciousness, of course, via one of the reality shows. Just remind us who he was.
So Liam Payne first auditioned for X Factor in 2008. And he had a great voice, so he got pretty far, got to judges' houses, and then was eliminated, and then came back in 2010, and that was when they formed One Direction sort of on the show. We saw it in real time, and that was when he went from being, you know, a reality TV contestant to a pop star, and then very quickly to a sort of global superstar and part of a music phenomenon.
They sold, I think they had 5 best-selling albums, Ed, and there was a film. But in the last few years, as is often the way with these boy bands, he'd struggled.
Absolutely. I mean, the success they had was just at such an extraordinary level. And the chance of any of them replicating that was, you know, arguably just impossible. But Harry Styles has sort of managed it, really. He's become a megastar in his own right. But the other 4 have had varying levels of success. And Liam had a sort of quite a good bit of success straight after the band, but then as time's gone on since the split in 2016, he's struggled to sort of keep going with that success. And I think, like we see with a lot of pop stars and sports stars, once the success and the career starts to wane, you know, it's very difficult to sort of maintain that purpose and that, you know, that structure that one needs. So it's a tale as old as time, very sadly.
Ed, I think what struck me, there's been some footage that obviously there's all sorts of footage and it's quite difficult at the moment to verify what we're seeing online. But there was certainly a Snapchat video that he had posted at this hotel in Buenos Aires with his girlfriend, Kate Cassidy. They're kind of having lunch at this table, but they're talking about having breakfast. And actually, she says, you know, we live the life, we don't wake up till midday. And it's so funny because I watched that and I thought, well, there is a route to not being very happy, actually.
Yeah.
He has $70 million in the bank. To be that rich and that without purpose at 31. It's a shame, Ed, isn't it, that somehow he couldn't find a way to be happy with all of that at his disposal.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that money doesn't buy happiness. Yeah. I think, you know, a really important thing is having structure and purpose. And I think that when, like I say, when you're a pop star or a sports star and you effectively retire early, it's very difficult to keep that going. And then your mental health starts to be affected. I mean, I've, you know, spent my career interviewing people in the public eye, and fame is not all it's cracked up to be. And you have to remember, you know, he's not sort of the level of a presenter or, you know, a reality star or something. This is like mega stardom. And so everywhere he goes, there's people taking photos and things like that. So, you know, it's a very unusual life to have lived. And the pressure and the scrutiny and the social media aspect, I imagine, was quite intense. So as much as I think we were all shocked when we saw the news last night, actually, when you look at all the factors around him, it in a way, it doesn't feel as shocking. And we obviously have seen this so many times with young pop stars where they die at a young age. And it is just incredibly tragic, but also in a way, unsurprising.
Yeah, Ed, and we shouldn't forget here, Ed, he had a 5-year-old son with his former girlfriend, Cheryl Cole. So that's a very difficult conversation Cheryl Cole has to have today.
I think he's 7 years old.
Is he 7 years old?
I think he's 7. And we have to remember that we've got a mum waking up this morning having to tell her son that Daddy has died.
That's a terrible sad
That is, for me, the most important part of this story, actually. And, of course, the mother of that child is also well-known and famous, Ed.
Yeah, Cheryl. It's funny you should say that because I saw the news last night, and then about an hour later, I thought, "Crikey, he's got a child." This is so sad. And when you humanise it back to that level and take away all the fame and all the sort of scrutiny and all of that, this is a guy with a child and a very young child at that. And so it's not just about the celebrity's died. This is someone's dad, and some, for Cheryl, this is extraordinarily difficult because, suddenly she's left without him to help. That I think really humanises it and brings it back to, why it's so sad, really.
Yeah.
All right, Ed, thanks for that. That's Ed Gleave, who's the TV and showbiz editor at the Daily Star. When I was reading about it, because I have to confess I don't know much about Liam Payne, that's what struck me most. I thought, he's a dad, and a little boy's lost his dad.
A little boy has just inherited possibly $70 million.
Yes, that's true.
And also causes...
that may not help him.
Well, this is the problem, isn't it? With vast amounts of wealth when you're very young.
Yeah.
What is your purpose? As I say, I discussed it with my girls when they were driving to the school bus this morning, and my 15-year-old was saying, "Yeah, but that's the dream, Mummy. Why wouldn't you want to have $70 million in the bank? That's the dream." It's not the dream.
If ever I see that 1960s film Oliver Twist, little Jack, the guy who played the Artful Dodger, nominated for an Oscar, Best Supporting Actor. He was 14 at the time, dead by the time he was 60. His whole life,
you see
he had millions, but lost it all in drink and drugs.
See it so often. You could, though, with that vast amount of wealth so young, you could live such a purposeful and dignified life if you just had the right advice and maybe the people around you to do good with it. It's so sad.
And it's going to be devastating, because his mum's still alive. It's devastating for Mum, too.
And 2 older sisters. So condolences to them this morning.
Up next, why is it such a nightmare to drive in Britain?
Are you exasperated by potholes, rising car insurance, or the occasional bout of road rage on your morning commute? Well, don't worry, you are not alone, and we will tell you why next. Don't go anywhere.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Love a bit of baking and share some hot tips. We're delighted to be joined by our baking extraordinaire, Matty Edgell, who won Great British Bake Off last year. Woo! Welcome. Congratulations as well. I'm sure you're sick of being congratulated.
And there's that reminder.
No, you like all the glory.
Yeah.
What was it like winning the Great British Bake Off? What's last year been like for you?
Winning it was I was not expecting to win. At any point until they said my name.
You're a very humble guy.
It was a nice surprise. No, I was just in touch with reality. I wasn't.
Was it quite a close race throughout then?
Yeah, I considered myself the underdog throughout. I think the first week I turned around after the showstopper and kind of saw how good everyone was, and then looked at mine and thought, how have I got here? And that kind of theme followed through.
But then that surely like an underdog.
Yeah, it did.
Actually, I'm going to get better throughout this.
Yeah, I think it made me kind of like really tune into the feedback that they was giving me and trying to embed that throughout. So that's probably why.
Could you feel yourself improving as the series went on?
Definitely, and I think also, like, kind of simultaneously, my confidence improved at the same time, and then that, like, little bit of belief in myself probably helped out as well.
What was your strength? Biscuits, cake, bread?
I think cake's my strength. I think cake, typically, if you start baking, that's probably where you start, isn't it? So that was what I knew most.
How did you start baking?
I've been asked this so many times since...
You don't know.
I attribute it to my nan.
Sweet.
But, yeah, I would say... I think most people probably attribute it to, like, a grandparent or something that they maybe done with, like, their parents when they was growing up. So that's... I'll give it to my nan.
Or the major lockdown baking boom.
Yeah, banana bread.
Everybody... All over the place, don't it? It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. I love a banana bread, even now.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top two for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christie's, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision Time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It is 9:47. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
So why is it such a nightmare driving on British roads? Well, partly because the government hates motorists.
Yeah. Or every city around the world hates motorists, all going in one direction, especially Western cities. Ministers have pledged to curb the spiralling costs of car insurance. Good luck with that.
Yeah, how are they going to do that? Less than 1 in 5 pothole claims are successful when people run over a pothole, try and claim it on insurance. Good luck.
Yeah, the price of lessons is through the roof. There are waiting lists for lessons. Good luck if you can get a driving test. It's all just moving towards a world in which we don't drive cars. Is it not? Let's talk to former racing driver and very well-known broadcaster Amanda Stretton. Amanda, good morning.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. Honestly, this war on the motorist just seems to be continuing and accelerating, does it not?
Nice pun on words. Yes, absolutely. It's a real challenge for motorists. Costs have been spiralling to the point where many people actually find it unaffordable. But not only that, as you say, the state of our roads is absolutely appalling. And it's incredibly hard for young people who want to get behind a wheel to actually do so as well. So it isn't looking good, but I think that the new announcement the government have made, certainly to look into one of those costs, being car insurance, is enormously welcome.
Well,
they've got up 21% in a year.
Yeah, insurance premiums going up 21% on average since June 22. So actually just in the last couple of years. But you probably noticed it yourself, Amanda. I've noticed it applying for my car insurance. You are absolutely stung if you don't ring around. And even when you do, it feels like they've got a captive market and they just say, sorry, it's doubled.
It is, and it's incredibly hard. I mean, there are so many factors at play here. First of all, obviously, the people who are repairing cars are suffering, like the rest of us, with the rising costs, that being cost of energy, cost of wages, cost of supplies. So that's the first problem. That, of course, is meaning that the cost of repairing a car is higher, which is, of course, having a greater impact on what the insurance companies are paying out. They make the motorists pay for that through their premium. So that's the first thing that's going on. The second thing is, as you say, it comes back to things like car theft and state of the roads. It is just incredibly difficult to actually accurately assess what an insurance company need in order to cover the premiums, which is why they've seen this huge rise and they're passing it on to the motorist.
And are the potholes causing a problem for drivers as well, Amanda, that people are then trying to claim?
Oh, completely. I mean, where I live, I'm in Oxfordshire at the moment. There is one pothole that reappears probably every 6 weeks. It is enormous. And not only will it damage your tyre, it could actually seriously damage your suspension as well. And it's simply never repaired sufficiently, which is why it just keeps coming back again. So pothole damage is a huge part in all of this as well. But as I say, it's things like fraudulent claims, that's another big problem. Car theft, another big problem. There are so many factors involved in this as well. It just becomes impossible for the motorists to actually get clarity. And that's, again, what I think that this announcement is going to lead to, because it seems always incredibly confusing when you apply for an insurance premium when you know that you're paying X, and yet somebody in your road or doing the same job or with the same demographic profile could be paying significantly less. There is so much confusion as to how risk is calculated. I think that actually needs to be looked at, and you know, motorists need to know what they're paying for and how their risk is actually calculated.
And I think I get there are a lot of factors, Amanda, like potholes and all the rest of it and theft, but actually it's the insurance companies too, isn't it? They're greedy.
Again, we need to have some clarity. I mean, it's impossible to say that they are greedy when we know that their costs are also rising. The problem is when it is so opaque and they are so unwilling to be clear about how these costs are calculated. That's, I think, the problem. If people knew exactly where the money was going and saw that maybe the profits that the insurance companies were making were not excessive, then at least you have some understanding of what's going on. As I say, the problem is there has always been a huge amount of opaqueness about how risk is calculated. That's why, as you correctly said, Bev, you know, you have to shop around because one company could very well give you a very different premium to another.
Yeah.
That's the key, isn't it?
It
You
is.
have to shop around.
And actually talk to a human being.
Yeah.
Call me old-fashioned, but I still like talking to a human being about these things rather than filling in a blimmin' online form. Amanda Stretton, thank you so much for joining us, former racing driver and broadcaster.
I don't have a car. I haven't had a car for over 30 years, but my partner has a car. I mean, the house every year when how much the policy's gone up.
Well, Penny's got in touch. You've all been in touch already at home. She says, I live in the Highlands. You hear people moaning about potholes, but on visiting seaside towns in England last summer, it was shocking.
Yeah.
Potholes in Eastbourne were horrendous, dangerous for cars, extremely dangerous for bikes and motorcycles. Such a good point. And even for pedestrians crossing roads, it is truly shocking to see how bad it is. And Michael says, can you claim on car insurance for pothole damage? That is the first that I've heard of it. You can actually, is because as long as you get some footage of it, you can try.
That's the point.
Particularly if you have a dash camera and you can show that you were on the road at that time. And Shutty has said another reason insurance is going up is the number of electric vehicles which suffer in a crash but have to be written off as they can't easily be repaired.
That's right. And also they're very heavy.
Yeah, they are.
And
Quite flammable, it seems.
Yeah, and that's causing pressure on the roads as well.
Yeah.
And of course, soon you'll have to be buying an electric car. You won't be able to buy a new car unless it's electric.
Well, that's getting moved. That
They've moved
line
to
in the
2035.
sand is moving forward, and I suspect it will hopefully keep moving.
I don't think so
further
under
into
Ed
the
Miliband. I
future.
don't think so under Ed Miliband. I think he's obsessed by all this.
Well, let's hope they're not there for that long. The other thing that, in terms of the future of the cars, is going to be car sharing, so nobody will own their own car. There will just be a car on your street. This is the idea that you share via your app. I don't think it'll catch on. Still to come.
And then we should talk about the green bikes. But that's a story for another time.
Right, find out still this morning what Sir Keir Starmer, Lover, Gary Neville and Andrew Pearce have in common. You won't believe this. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Aidan is here with your weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A much brighter day today for most of us. Sunny spells far and wide. Still some showers around, particularly across some western parts. But actually, for many, it's a dry start to the day. We've got the last of Thursday or Wednesday's rain clearing from the Northern Isles, and just some showers following in for Northern Ireland, parts of southern and western Scotland, Wales and the southwest. These showers will be hit and miss. In between, there'll be some sunshine. The best of the sunshine across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, and it will feel mild once again, but not quite as mild as Wednesday, so highs of 16 to 19 Celsius. There is the chance of some thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain moving into the far southeast by the end of the day, and we'll still have those showers affecting parts of central and western Scotland as well. But as you can see, plenty of clear spells as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland, mixture of clear spells and showers. 1 or 2 showers for Cumbria, parts of Wales and the southwest, but plenty of fine weather through central and eastern parts of the UK. Now, with clear skies widely overnight, it's going to be a cooler night compared with recent nights. A few mist and fog patches are possible, and some patchy cloud, particularly across western parts, especially of the hills. Otherwise, for many, it's a fine start to Friday. Temperatures of 8 to 12 Celsius typically first thing, and feeling pleasant enough in any early sunshine. But
Things are going to turn more unsettled. Initially for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, we'll see rain and wind arrive through the morning. The rain moves into Wales and the southwest, the rest of Scotland and eventually northern England, whilst the winds strengthen across many western and northwestern parts. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts for northwest Scotland, but it stays sunny with lighter winds in the southeast.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Murray, the A941 is partly blocked by an accident on Elgin Road at Lossiemouth, causing delays in Northumberland. The A69 is closed each way between Holtwhistle and Greenhead after an accident, delays each way towards there. And as you divert, on the M62 in West Yorkshire, 2 out of 3 lanes are closed westbound after an accident between junctions 31 and 30 from Castleford to Rothwell. It's taking over half an hour in queues from junction 32 at Pontefract. On Merseyside, the A580 East Lancs Road is closed westbound from the A58 at Haydock to the A571 at St Helens because of flooding. There are long delays towards there, and as you divert, and train services are suspended between Crewe and Chester because of flooding. On the M4 near Bristol, there's a lane closed eastbound where someone's broken down between junctions 21 and 20 towards the M5. On the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed eastbound for repairs at junction 12 at Portsmouth, causing delays.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
There's only 2 weeks.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's 10 o'clock on Thursday, the 17th of October, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Former One Direction singer Liam Payne has died, aged just 31. His body was found outside a hotel in Argentina. He fell from a third-floor balcony.
And is there a budget tax raid incoming? I think we can probably say yes. Chancellor Rachel Reeves may well be the biggest tax raise in history in the upcoming budget. Other cabinet ministers are apparently not happy about it.
Is HS2 heading north after all? Ministers have apparently had a rethink on the HS2 train line and now will run, apparently, between London, Euston and Crewe. Waste of money? I think so.
And there are going to be royals down under. The King and Queen are off to Australia today, but every state leader has declined their invitation to a reception. Why? More on to come.
And is Britain the worst place to be a driver? Car insurance is rocketing, potholes are everywhere, and cases of road rage are going up too. Well, you tell us what your biggest bugbear is about Britain's roads. And tonight, the Conservative leadership hopefuls Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch go head-to-head. It's a GB News special at 7 p.m. Don't miss it. We're going to talk to Chris Hope about that.
Yeah, we are. Yep, Christopher is hosting the event tonight. We're going to be talking to him in just a minute. He is rehearsing. Maybe send, if you like, gbnews.com. Send us the questions you would like asked.
Exactly. And, of course, we want to know what you think. Send your views, your comments to gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with Sam Francis.
Bev, Andrew, thank you, and good morning. It's just coming up to 2 minutes past 10. Start with a recap of the news we've been following over the last few hours. That tributes are continuing now to pour in for Liam Payne, as fans and fellow stars are remembering the former One Direction singer after his death in Buenos Aires at the age of 31. His career soared during his time in One Direction, but in recent years he did speak openly about struggles with mental health and addiction, admitting to hitting rock bottom. Social media has been flooded with tributes, with many sharing memories of his iconic performances and personal struggles. Dermot O'Leary is among them. He hosted Payne's X Factor debut, calling him humble, and said that he loved to sing while fans have been seen lighting candles outside the hotel where he died. In other news, thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement being signed today by the Defence Secretary John Healey. It would mean that the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days, equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. Well, as NATO ministers are gathering as we speak in Brussels, the Defence Secretary has said in the last few minutes that new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of what he described as escalating global threats.
The UK's unshakable commitment to NATO could never be more important. And at a time of growing Russian aggression and increasing wider threats, today we will make the commitment to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with a new plan alongside Estonia for our forces there. And we will make a commitment, a UK commitment, to bolstering the future of Europe's defences.
Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum here in the UK as the government's pushing to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council's estimated that the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests the processing of that backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says it is committed to ending the use of asylum hotels, despite recent reports that the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. Kemi Badenoch says that her bid for Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach. As the two contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain voters that were lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats in July's election. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick's outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that the return of spending on benefits could get back to pre-pandemic levels, helping for a tax cut. From 7 p.m. tonight, they will be making their pitches to Tory members in a special programme moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. You can catch all of that action live here on GB News, 7 till 9 tonight in Decision Time, the race to lead. Well, the private sector landlords across the country are calling on the Chancellor to give them urgent tax breaks to curb soaring rents and tackle the housing crisis. In a letter to Rachel Reeves, industry leaders have highlighted the uncertainty facing their sector as average advertised rents have hit record highs, with now 18% of homes on the sale market previously rented out. They're warning that rental taxation is driving landlords to exit the market, undermining the very housing supply needed to help tenants. It comes as the Chancellor is looking to raise £40 billion through tax hikes and spending cuts in the upcoming budget. A new report has claimed the World Bank has lost track of billions in climate finance. Oxfam says that $41 billion, nearly 40% of climate funding from 2017 to 2023, is unaccounted for in the bank's records. The report suggests there's no public trace of how or if the money was even spent on climate projects. The World Bank has yet to comment on those findings from Oxfam. Parliament's first bionic Lord has pledged to battle the Health Secretary to raise awareness of sepsis and to improve prosthetics for amputees. Lord Craig McKinley, the first quadruple amputee to join the House of Lords, takes his seat after being given a peerage in Rishi Sunak's dissolution honours. He says his new role gives him a new lease of life following his near-death experience in a 16-day coma. McKinley had both legs and arms amputated after contracting sepsis in 2023. He's now determined to use his position, he says, to make a difference. And finally, electric wallpaper could be the hottest new trend, with a trial in full swing in properties in Glasgow. With Scottish homes ranked among Europe's oldest and worst insulated, it's hoped the new clean heat source could replace traditional central heating, which contributes over 35% of UK's carbon emissions. Tenants are already raving about the excellent results, they say, since installation. And powered by cutting-edge technology from the University of Glasgow, the project also taps into AI and so-called Internet of Things to help measure energy efficiency, cost and comfort. Definitely one for Bev Turner, a interior design extraordinaire. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll hand you straight back to them.
Electric wallpaper. I don't think I fancy that, do you? Right, welcome back to Britain's Newsroom, live across the UK with Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce.
Lots of you getting in touch on gbnews.com/your say.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you expressing your unhappiness about the death of Liam Payne this morning. A lot of people don't necessarily know who he was. He hasn't been really on the front of the papers or kind of in the public eye for a while, even though he had $70 million in the bank.
It's the classic boy band story, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's really sad.
When the fame goes, when the profile goes, they struggle. And of course, you have to say that he'd been behaving incredibly erratically. He'd smashed up his laptop. He'd had to be taken to his hotel room. And of course, we know that he'd had a long history of problems with drink and drugs.
Yeah, it's very difficult this morning to pin down and verify the facts around the death of Liam Payne, because obviously these days on social media you're never quite sure what's true and what's not. There are rumours that his room was strewn with drug paraphernalia. His girlfriend Kate Cassidy had left that morning. It sounds like, or maybe within the previous 24 hours, he was on his own. But there was obviously some sort of altercation. The suggestion isn't necessarily that he took his own life. There's also a rumour that he might have been leaping off the third-floor balcony into a swimming pool, perhaps high on drugs. We just don't know.
No, exactly.
What we do know is that this morning, the mother of his child has to say that Daddy is dead.
Yeah, he had a 7-year-old son with the former... She was a Spice Girl, wasn't she?
No, Cheryl Tweedy. No, she wasn't a Spice Girl. She was in Girls Aloud.
Girls Aloud.
She was also found from X Factor, wasn't she? And she married Ashley Cole. So she was Cheryl Tweedy, then she was Cheryl Cole, and then I don't know what she is now.
But she's managed the fame, the withdrawal from huge fame much better. But I guess if you're a mum...
Yeah. Talking about cars as well this morning, we've just been talking about the potholes and the fact that car insurance has gone through the roof in this country, 12 times more. The increase has been 12 times more than, say, in France. So we're getting stitched up as usual. Why does it always feel like that? Barry says, Barry Clamp, I'm glad a man called Clamp has got in touch about a car issue. Morning, Barry. Advice to drivers suffering car damage due to potholes. You can claim from the applicable council.
I was going to say, that's what you can do. You can get in touch with the town hall, but you need to take a photograph of the damage. Probably need... but good luck getting the money out of the council.
He said it took me a year...
There we are.
...to get paid by the council for the £900 damage it cost, but you must persevere. Yeah. Too many drivers blame themselves for pothole damage. It isn't your fault.
There's a pothole near... We were talking, weren't we, earlier, to the racing driver...
Amanda Stretton.
Yeah, and she was talking about a pothole near her. There's one near my house. They repair it probably twice a year.
And it just keeps breaking.
Because they don't repair it properly.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Well, on the cheap.
Of course it is. It's an absolute money-making scheme for the builders. You see a council bill and you go, right, I'll stick a couple of zeros on that. The taxpayer will pay it and I'll do a bad job.
I'm amazed that ambulances and fire engines haven't gone hurtling into some of these potholes.
Probably have. Onslow says, question for tonight's debate. Don't forget the big debate this evening, Kemi Badenoch versus Robert Jenrick. He says, why, when answering some questions, do you come across as arrogant? Now, you haven't said, Onslow, who that's directed at.
Is that at Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch, or is it both?
And Robert says, of course, this government has stopped using hotels for asylum seekers. They're giving them all a house and benefits for life, while the British people wait even more years on the housing list. It certainly can feel like that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, moving on now, voters now feel more positively about Reform UK, led, of course, by Nigel Farage, than they do the Labour Party. That's according to a new poll by JL Partners.
So let's speak to the co-founder of JL Partners, Dr Tom Lubbock. Good morning, Tom. So,
hi, Andrew. Hi, Beth.
Morning. So I saw the results of this poll this morning and I said, was that poll commissioned by the Reform Party? But tell us, no, this is an objective analysis by your firm. In fact, tell me what you found.
Yeah, it's actually our first JL Partners poll that includes voting intentions since the general election, so commissioned by us. no other client involved. And I hate to say it, but we are in a position now where no politician or political party is seen more positively than they are negatively. So they're all in net negative territory.
Gosh.
It's really bad news for the country as a whole, I'm afraid.
But the Reform, who were second to the Labour Party in nearly 100 seats, I think, Tom, at the last election, are they now out polling Labour in your poll?
So in terms of the actual voting intention, Labour still have a 4-point lead over the Conservatives, so they're still ahead. But in terms of how people feel about these parties, whether they feel positively or negatively, Reform are on -13, Labour are on -19. And so, you know, technically Reform are more popular than Labour. Labour have had a really bad summer, as has Keir Starmer, who is on a -25 approval rating. It's been a terrible summer for Labour. There's no other way to describe it. But they're in for 5 years. And so, look, I think anyone who wants the country to succeed wants them to get some of this political capital back and actually be able to push through some of the reforms that they were elected to do. Otherwise, you know, we're going to be in a real state in 5 years' time.
And Tom, this is before the budget, and the budget we've seen. I mean, all the front pages today are dominated by the budget. We now know that 3 cabinet ministers have gone above the head of the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, directly to the Prime Minister to object to what Rachel Reeves is proposing. The Telegraph describing it as the biggest budget tax raiser in history. It's going to be hugely unpopular, and so their poll ratings are going to suffer even more.
Yeah, I have to say, if I were Labour, I would be getting more and more nervous as we get closer to this budget. The noises off are not positive. There's not really a story that's being told about what's coming in this budget that offers any way of getting this political capital back for Labour. And I think, look, the one thing in the polling we just did that could be good for them is a U-turn on the winter fuel allowance. Now, that, I think, to Labour figures, that would seem incredible because, it's a policy they've stuck with for a couple of months and, it's already in the books. But I tell you, they're looking for a reset after the summer, and it's the only thing that's on offer to them that would convince voters, particularly pensioners, where they've lost the most votes, that they're actually listening and they're on their side. So that's their great opportunity for a reset. If they grasp it, I don't know, but that's the one thing that's positive I can see that could come out of the budget.
Just finally, Tom, have you ever experienced a new government losing so much support so quickly? Because normally there is a honeymoon period.
Yeah, it's so rare for new governments to actually come in and change stripe. I think David Cameron said it's him, Tony Blair, and Keir Starmer in the last kind of 30 years. So we don't get to see it very often. And this one has gone downhill faster than the other two.
Fascinating.
OK, thank you so much, co-founder of JL Partners polling company, Dr. Tom Lubbock there.
Well, let's talk now to Christopher Hope, who's our political editor, because it's a big night today, Christopher. It's a big night for the Conservative Party, a big night for GB News, and a big night for you because you are chairing this head-to-head between Jenrick and Badenoch. Tell us what you're doing right now. You're preparing for it.
That's right. We're preparing here at a venue for this quite an exciting event for GB News tonight. It's the only agreed and a planned leadership event between Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. It comes just as ballot papers are arriving. Some people voted yesterday of those members. They were sent out on all the packs to about 140,000 Tory members on Tuesday. They are landing through letterboxes today, tomorrow, over the weekend. And as we know, Andrew and Bev, most members tend to vote very quickly. So it's very likely this contest could be over, frankly, by early next week, with most of the ballot papers or online papers filled in, and that's why it's so important tonight's event. It's called Decision Time: The Race to Lead. We are asking for questions from GB News viewers. So before I ask you two briefly what your questions are, Andrew and Bev, the email to email is gbviews@gbnews.com. So any viewers or listeners who want us to put a question that's burning, they want to ask it of either Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch, email that email, and we're monitoring it all day, and we'll do our best to ask them later. But what will be your best questions to these two candidates, Andrew and Bev?
Chris, I think the big problem either of them get who wins is how do they make the Tory party relevant again? How do they get people to listen to what the Tory party's got to say? Because the Tory party was so loathed by the time of the last general election, and I think they've still got a huge mountain to climb, Chris.
And Bev, what's your question to either of those two candidates?
I don't know. You sprung this on us slightly here, Chris. What would I want to know? I'd be interested to know about their vision for education, actually, and taking out some of the identity politics, perhaps, that the schools seem completely preoccupied by, being more transparent about the PHSE curriculum, whether they've actually got the backbone to seriously look at how we teach our kids in this country, and perhaps just rip up the whole system and start again, because we're still based it on a Victorian system of teaching, and it's not fit for purpose in the 21st century.
And if that does come up, Chris, the other thing I would say in that is, do they think smartphones should be banned from schools?
It's a great question on smartphones, and in fact on the issue of education overall, the Tories have a good record under Nick Gibb, of course, the former education minister, who did so well with phonics, lifting standards in schools in England, of course not in Scotland so much, of course, as we know by the record there. But yeah, I mean, across the piece, defence, health, tax and spend, welfare, all these areas we want to try and put to the leaders tonight. So any viewers, listeners, please do email in gbviews@gbnews.com, and in the subject line, please write the word decision time.
OK, brilliant. You will be fantastic tonight, Chris. We will be watching. We wish you lots of luck. Nobody better to host that debate tonight than Christopher.
So don't forget, tune in from 7 o'clock. Absolutely huge moment for the Tory party, and a huge moment for GB News.
Yeah, it is. It's good.
Eat your heart out, BBC.
Do you know, there's a few of you saying you don't care. Well, you might find you have to care at some point in the next few years as to which of those are going to be leading the Conservative Party.
Exactly.
And particularly, as we've just heard then from our pollster, about reform breathing down the neck of both parties.
I thought they would.
It's going to be very interesting in the next few years.
If this Labour government doesn't get to grips with immigration, reform will reap the benefits at the general election.
They don't care about immigration. That's the issue. You can only get to grips with something if you care about it.
Yeah.
Now, do you care about this? If you wanted to shave a few minutes off your train journey between London and Crewe, well, we might have some very good news for you. Youth Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You must be so proud of your daughter being so just amazingly brave and a model for other people who face illness.
I think we're proud of her all day, every day, and always have been. Liz has always given her all to anything she put her mind to, whether that was studying for her GCSE exams at school or whether it's been her photography and battling cancer. Liz never does anything by half, and we are so incredibly proud of her each and every day.
And Liz, I noticed a wonderful line from you saying that when you've got cancer, A-levels don't matter so much. That seems to me to be a very reasonable view to take, and has given you then the chance to do these other amazing things that you will be doing more of in future with the London Ambulance Service. And I imagine many people will want to help you with your bucket list because they've now seen you and seen how brave you are.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we've already been overwhelmed by the responses and the support by so many people. I think when my mum originally posted the list, it received like 4,000 replies. It was insane, and still there's more. So from the bottom of our hearts, and especially mine, we just want to say thank you, because there's nothing that forces anyone to get in touch and say, hey, I have something you can do, pop over and do this or that, or it's just out of the generosity of their hearts. So thank you.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with me, Bev Turner, and Andrea Pearce. We are so happy to have back in the studio Barrister Sam Fowles. He's been very busy trying to keep Labour afloat behind the scenes, doing all sorts of things in the legal sphere.
Well, not doing very well there, then, are you?
And for the first time on Britain's Newsroom, former Tory MP Steve Baker. Steve, it's so brilliant to have you here as well this morning.
Because we've got you here, the debate tonight, 7 o'clock, big moment for both of them.
Yeah.
Have you made your mind up, Steve?
Yes, I'm backing Kemi for her authenticity. I mean, she's ferociously committed to her beliefs, and we do need a bit of that.
Yeah, conviction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for too long, the ship of state has been tossed about by the storm of events, and that's been because, I'm afraid, Prime Ministers haven't been true believers in something, anything, and she is, so...
But are you not slightly concerned, or even a lot concerned, that she might blow up? Because she does have a habit of picking fights and saying the wrong thing, and then not owning the mess. For instance, the row over maternity pay at the time.
I don't think there's any avoiding that she has sometimes picked fights for which she was not perfectly prepared, and you just can't do that. And that's a choice that she can just make, to not do that anymore.
Let's face it, she wouldn't be the first MP to have picked a fight for which she wasn't prepared.
Well,
she won't be the last.
True. That is true. I suppose I've had the advantage of being in the midst of a lot of fights, so I know that you do actually have to know what you're talking about before you go into it.
What about Jenrick? I mean, are either of them up to it?
Well, I mean, I backed Tom in the first place, and I would have run myself if I'd won my seat. So, you know, they are the choice, and I think they're both very talented colleagues. But of course,
very diplomatic answers.
Well, one of them's going to win, and I'd like them to be.
Are they up to it? You said they're very talented.
an MP at heart.
It's still a little bit raw because, as I say, if I'd won my seat, I would have run.
Just remind us why you lost your seat. By how many votes?
About 4,500. But what happened was that Labour's vote fell.
Yeah.
And mine collapsed, and it was disillusioned Conservative voters staying at home over betting on the result, not staying to the end of D-Day. We're talking good, solid Conservative people whose parents were in the armed forces, or they might have been in the armed forces, and they were not impressed. And it's a mistake that somebody who'd been in the armed forces wouldn't have made.
And Reform did OK in your seat?
Not especially. They went back to UKIP's level of 2015, and the Lib Dems actually fell. And I know what happened there. It was 2,000 angry former Conservative voters, furious with me over Brexit. They went to Labour in 19 and then the Lib Dems this time. But the material thing really was Tory voters, staying at home. And I did have a boundary change, but if those Conservative voters had turned out, I would have won.
And Sam Fowles, now, of course, we're left with this fantastic Labour government who are just doing brilliantly and just wowing everyone and are flying in the polls. You must be delighted.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some things that I'm excited about.
Really?
I wrote in City M this morning. I think the Employment Rights Bill is a really good thing for workers, but really good for the economy as a whole, because it creates an incentive to invest and to innovate rather than just trying to make money by exploiting workers. So things like that, fantastic. What there hasn't been, though, is a narrative, is a story about what this Labour government is going to do to change the country. And that was the one-word slogan, wasn't it, during the general election, is change. And I think now they're in the spotlight and people are saying, OK, what's the change? What's the big vision? How are our lives going to change over the next 5 years? And we don't have that.
And 3 cabinet ministers have written to the Prime Minister. They've gone over the head of the Chancellor, Sam, to object to what Rachel Reeves is planning in this budget, which the Telegraph described as the biggest tax raiser in history. So, I mean, cabinet discipline is breaking down already.
And in a way, I quite like to see that, actually. I like to see, at this early stage, cabinet ministers saying, you know, no, I don't agree, I'm not going to fall in line, I'm going to express my disagreement and I'm going to explain why. That's what we want from the cabinet, right? We want them to challenge each other and hold each other to account. However, I must say I do agree with with where they're coming from. I think that what is essentially being proposed is, in day-to-day spending at least, an austerity budget. And that's, you know, that is an economic strategy that has consistently failed for more than a decade.
The strategy's been bizarre. I mean, it just seems like she's talking down the country.
There's well, yes, absolutely, and she's a very important voice capable of moving markets, and she therefore shouldn't. But if I may, I'll just pick up on two things there. First, the Cabinet is subject to collective responsibility. They are required in public to have one voice, so they shouldn't be leaking this stuff. But I'm afraid you can't kid a kidder. What I think is going on here is this has been allowed deliberately to emerge, because what the Labour Party needs to do is, because the pattern in Wickham was repeated so frequently, they need to convert a broad and very shallow majority into a deep one so they can become the natural party of government. That's what they want, and they're trying to position to the free market right of the Conservative Party on regulations, on fiscal prudence, and I think that's what this is about. They went for the pensioners' winter fuel allowance, and that was either an act of complete stupidity or it's a fight they picked. And they've put the Tories in a position where they've backed keeping that allowance for wealthy pensioners. Now we're having a row that the cut's going to be terribly, terribly deep and hard, you know, real austerity from the Labour Party. I think by the time we get to the budget, Rachel Reeves will be trying to land the message that the Labour Party is more fiscally responsible than the Conservatives. And I think that's what this is about. It's not really discipline breaking down.
We talk about this story this morning, Sam, that's, we have to credit LBC, our rival, because this is an exclusive for them that they seem to have dug out from behind the scenes, which is that the rail line will now run HS2. They're going to reverse Rishi Sunak's decision to stop HS2 and reinstate the route from Birmingham to Crewe. That would be a significant development to our infrastructure.
Yeah, I think it's really positive to hear this, and this is something that would make me a bit more excited about Labour. Not as excited as if it was going all the way to Manchester, but more excited than it is at the moment. And the reason for this is, yes, it's very expensive, it's a big infrastructure project, but looking at this from a broader perspective, the thing that has been holding our economy back for the last decade and a half, if not a bit more, is the lack of investment in infrastructure. And it's not just the day-to-day spending, it's the signal that it sends to business and to investors and to workers as well, that the government is committed to building a country that can make money, building an economy that can grow. And I think when we cut HS2, we sent that signal saying that, look, we're basically giving up. We're giving up on infrastructure. This suggests that maybe that's being reversed and that we are building and that this is a country you can invest in.
What do you think, Steve?
The costs are eye-watering. Yeah. How's she found... I thought we had a £22 billion black hole. Where's this coming from?
I opposed HS2 from the start because it was always going to massively overrun. Yeah. I mean, just in terms of usefulness, it would
The cost has tripled, by the way.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, it's got up to 49 to 56 billion, and back in 2010 I was warning that this would happen. I got myself elected to the Transport Select Committee to fight it, and I made all these points, and I was practically a lone voice because all the front benches agreed. And beware the day that all the front benches agree, and it was impossible to resist it. It's now, we're getting into something called the sunk costs fallacy. Billions have been poured into it, and so people will keep spending, you know, good money after bad. What HS2 really does deliver as a benefit is capacity. If you get the passengers off the lower speed lines, that releases the lower speed lines for freight, and that's a good thing. But for me, if this was really, if high-speed rail was really going to have utility, it would need to run all the way to Scotland. It's not going to.
No.
But also, you can't even get Wi-Fi on a train. You know, the idea that you can get to Manchester so like 20 minutes quicker than from London, nobody needs that now when you can work. Most people are working from home anyway. I do feel like this is maybe this. We just don't need this. Time has moved on. It's become out of date.
Isn't it out of date?
I think it is.
Get good Wi-Fi on the trains and we can work when we're on them.
I mean, you're looking at two different issues here. So HS2 is national investment from the government in infrastructure. Wi-Fi on the train is the private company that's running the train. And I mean, yes, there's a big debate to be had about that, and maybe we can have that. But in terms of government investing, I think it's really sort of short-termist to say, yeah, this is very expensive, so we're not going to bother with it anymore. What I'd like to see is that saying this is very expensive, and let's ask ourselves why infrastructure projects are always so expensive. One of the reasons is you get planning objections, and for example, the Chiltern part of HS2 took a different route because of objections. I think that's a good thing. I think that's local democracy. I think that's people being given a voice. Another reason is because they use so many different companies, different levels of companies, that are each taking a profit at each stage, that the overall cost goes up massively, and that's something I think is a bad thing.
The billions been spending on this, I would say, would be better, Steve, investing in a rail line which goes from east to west and the north.
Because it would connect some of the amazing cities that we have. And this country,
Liverpool.
this country does have amazing cities and some brilliant entrepreneurs in great places like Manchester, I happen to know. They tend to miss out because they're too far from London. But we do need to do a lot better on infrastructure, that's very clear. But I just gently remind everybody that the great infrastructure that this country relies on was built in the Victorian era. And by the private sector. And one of the big problems here is we get massive distortions through the state land use planning system and massive distortions through the state being involved. And, you know, I think we ought to just take stock that it was the private sector in the great era of laissez-faire that built the infrastructure that made this country great.
Right, Steve Baker, Sam Fowles, thank you so much. You'll be back in the next hour. But over to another Sam now, the Francis version, with your news headlines.
Very good morning to you. It is just after 10:30. And first, a roundup of the news that Liam Payne has continued to receive tributes this morning as fans and fellow members of the celebrity circle continue to remember the former One Direction singer after his death at Buenos Aires at the age of 31. His career soared during his time in One Direction, but in recent years he spoke openly about his struggles with mental health and of addiction, admitting to hitting rock bottom. Social media has been flooded with tributes, with many sharing memories of his iconic performances and personal struggles. Dermot O'Leary among them, who hosted X Factor during Liam Payne's time on the show. He's called him humble and said he loved to sing, while fans have been seen lighting candles outside the hotel where he died. Thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement being signed today by Defence Secretary John Healey. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. Well, as NATO ministers are gathering in Brussels today, the Defence Secretary said that new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of what he described as escalating and global threats. Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government's pushing to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council is estimating the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Conservatives' Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests that processing the backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says that it's committed to ending the use of asylum hotels, despite recent reports the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. Kemi Badenoch says that her bid for the Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign, taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach. As the two contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain votes they lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick has outlined his vision for the smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to pre-pandemic levels could help a tax cut. Well, from 7 p.m. tonight, they'll make their pitches to Tory membership in a special programme here on GB News, moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. You can catch all the action live here on GB News 7 till 9 o'clock tonight in Decision Time, the race to lead. New weight loss jabs, touted as a potential boost for Britain's economy by getting people back to work, may also help treat alcohol addiction. Researchers in Chicago found that drugs like Ozempic reduced intoxication rates by 50% in individuals with alcohol use disorder. Experts believe the jabs, which target both appetite and brain functions related to addiction, could be a promising new treatment for both alcohol and opioid addiction. Those are the latest headlines for now. Up next, a quick break before we hand back to Andrew and Bev. First, though, a look at the markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Well, let's take a quick look at the markets as they stand this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2982 and €1.1961. The price of gold, £2,604 and 1 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is currently at 8,350 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
So, in just a minute, we're going to give you a preview of the King and Queen's trip to Australia. And we'll tell you all about Harry and Meghan's new house in Portugal. There's a twist to that tale.
Of course there is.
You don't want to miss it.
There's always a twist when it's with those two.
Don't go anywhere. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A much brighter day today for most of us. Sunny spells far and wide, still some showers around, particularly across some western parts. But actually for many it's a dry start to the day. We've got the last of Wednesday's rain clearing from the Northern Isles and just some showers following in for Northern Ireland, parts of southern and western Scotland, Wales and the southwest. These showers will be hit and miss. In between, there'll be some sunshine. The best of the sunshine across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, and it will feel mild once again, but not quite as mild as Wednesday, so highs of 16 to 19 Celsius. There is the chance of some thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain moving into the far southeast by the end of the day, and we'll still have those showers affecting parts of central and western Scotland as well. But as you can see, plenty of clear spells as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland, mixture of clear spells and showers. 1 or 2 showers for Cumbria, parts of Wales and the southwest, but plenty of fine weather through central and eastern parts of the UK. Now with clear skies widely overnight, it's going to be a cooler night compared with recent nights. A few mist and fog patches are possible and some patchy cloud, particularly across western parts, especially over the hills. Otherwise, for many, it's a fine start to Friday. Temperatures of 8 to 12 Celsius typically first thing, and feeling pleasant enough in any early sunshine. But things are going to turn more unsettled. Initially for Northern Ireland and Western Scotland, we'll see rain and wind arrive through the morning. The rain moves into Wales and the southwest, the rest of Scotland and eventually northern England, whilst the winds strengthen across many western and northwestern parts. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts for northwest Scotland, but it stays sunny with lighter winds in the southeast.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding on the M62 in West Yorkshire. 2 out of 3 lanes are closed westbound after an accident between junctions 31 and 30 from Castleford to Rothwell. It's taking up a half an hour in queues from junction 32 at Pontefract. South Yorkshire, the A635 is closed between Hickleton and Mar after an accident yesterday evening. In Shropshire, the A49 is closed each way between Marshbrook and Craven Arms because of flooding. Train services aren't running between Chester and Shrewsbury because of flooding, with buses running between Chester and Crewe and between Rock Ferry in both Chester and Ellesmere Port. On the M4 near Bristol, 2 lanes are closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 20 and 19 from the M5 to the M32, causing queues. And on the M27 in Hampshire, there's a lane closed eastbound for emergency repairs at junction 12 for the M275 at Portsmouth, with queues from just before junction 10 at Wickham.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision Time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What's the time? The time is 10:41. This is Britain's Newsroom. Now, the King and Queen are leaving Britain today. They're going down under for their first Australian tour since they took to the throne.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice? A bit of sunshine. Well, GBNews' royal correspondent Cameron Walker is travelling to Australia. Lucky Cameron, and he sent this report ahead of the trip.
We want to put our best foot forward and show the King and Queen what we've got.
History in the making. The first time a reigning king will step foot on Australia's shores. A royal tour that has been months in the planning.
Behind those walls, the royal household have made final preparations for a trip which arguably could be the most important of King Charles's reign so far. His first visit to Australia as the country's head of state.
Standing at last on Australian soil.
The King's mother, the late Queen Elizabeth, visited Australia 16 times during her long reign. And citizens, according to 9 News correspondent Jessica Millward, had a deeply personal connection with her.
It's impossible to overstate the sadness and the outpouring of grief that we saw across Australia when she passed away. And they love Charles. They've grown up watching him. Overwhelmingly, I do feel that the mood will be one of excitement, and we want to put our best foot forward and show the King and Queen what we've got.
The King's medical team have allowed him to pause his weekly cycle of cancer treatment while he's away in Australia and Samoa. Although Buckingham Palace declined to comment, it's understood the programme of engagements have been designed in such a way to allow him time to rest and recover, making sure he's on top form for those engagements. A doctor will also be part of his travelling entourage.
The trip will see Their Majesties immerse themselves in Australian culture, including a community barbecue and meeting Indigenous communities. But not everyone is happy Their Majesties are coming to Australia, and Republicans are already branding it the farewell tour of Oz, despite referendum plans being put on hold by the government. But Nathan Hansford from the Australian Republic movement believes King Charles will be removed sooner rather than later.
We've always known that there was no referendum planned on an Australian Republic in this term of government, but we're most hopeful that we can get that back on the table in front of the government for them to think about it, at least in the next term of government or the one after that. We're certainly not thinking that this is 10 years away.
But the Australian Monarchist League questions the alternative to a reigning monarch.
I'm simply waiting for the Republicans to produce an idea that really is something more than vague platitudes and appeals to emotional arguments. I don't think anyone will ever really be able to top constitutional monarchy. I'm a monarchist, and that's what I like about our system.
Republicans may have dismissed the upcoming visits before the royal flight leaves UK airspace, but it's up to Australian citizens to judge whether King Charles III is a worthy head of state. Cameron Walker, GB News.
We've gone a bit early on the biscuits. You just caught us red-handing. Well, joining us now is former royal correspondent for The Sun, Charles Ray. Morning, Charles. I hope you've got a cup of tea and a biscuit as well. Sorry about that.
Not yet.
It's now listen. We're just hearing then about the fact that the royal family are still quite controversial in Australia.
Yeah.
Andrew and I were commenting as we opened our biscuits to say, really, if they could get Prince William and Princess Catherine over there, she could probably win back the hearts and minds of the Australian people who are wavering on the royal family.
Well, good morning, Bev, and good morning, Andrew. Yeah, I mean, you have got a point, but the fact that Australia, I mean, I covered the royals in Australia on a number of occasions, and each time that I went, there was always this undercurrent of, we want to boot the royals out and everything else. Listen, there is nothing the King can do or we can do to prevent Australia going to the polls and voting as a republic. We've had other members of the Commonwealth leave, get rid of the constitutional monarchy, but they still retain links with the country, economic and social links. So I would expect if Australia do leave, we still have strong links with Australia. And I think it's a great pity that the that the premiers of the various states have decided to snub the King's invitation to a reception. I think it's very, very rude. I mean, you don't have to agree with the King, but to snub it like that is, I just don't think is on.
I think it's incredibly ill-mannered, Charles, and they would never have done it to the late Queen.
No, not in a million years. And this Australian Republican movement, they've still got a big problem to sort out before they can get to that referendum, and that is the referendum to give greater political rights to the Indigenous population there, so that they can vote in this referendum. So we're not talking about getting rid of the monarchy in, within a year or 2 years or whatever. And if it happens, it happens. And the King, there's nothing the King can do about it, nor would he want to do about it. It's entirely up to the Australian people to decide whether they want to have the monarchy there or not.
Can we just ask you, Charles, about Meghan and Harry? They're buying a property in Portugal, very nice too. It appears to be linked to Harry's cousin, Eugenie's husband,
Jack
Brooks Banks.
He runs the marketing department for this house at Costa Terra Golf and Ocean Club. Do you think that's a coincidence?
No, surprise, surprise. They're using their relatives who've got it. Yeah, no, Jack and Eugenie have got a house there, and as you quite rightly say, he represents the company in whose house he has bought. So it's only natural to think that Harry and Meghan are going to be close neighbours to the couple. But
do you think they got a discount?
Sorry?
Do you think they got a discount?
Oh, I'm sure they've got a good deal. Far better than you and I would ever get, Andrew. I can assure you.
But it could also give them a visa, of course, to the European Union's Schengen area, which I mean they can travel quite easily.
Yeah, well, it's more importantly for Meghan to do that because Harry can do that can do that in any case. He's still technically a British subject.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, if they get this golden visa, I don't think that's why they're doing it, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I'm still of the view that Meghan's never going to set foot in this country ever again. And, and I say, hurrah, fantastic.
Yeah, I hope you're right, Charles.
Yeah, so do I. But, if Harry keeps coming back and forth because he's got various charities to sort out and legal matters to sort out as well. So there's nothing preventing him coming back, whether or not he's got a place in Portugal.
Sure. OK, thank you, Charles. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to talk to him.
We got to go. It's what we call tea and biscuits time. Don't go anywhere. See you in...
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player app. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
I'm joined now by an acknowledged authority on Ludwig van Beethoven. He's already written 7 books on the subject, and next week his 8th is released. It's called In Search of Beethoven, and it stands apart as a deeply personal account of John Suchet's relationship with the great composer as he follows his footsteps from Bonn to Vienna. Yes, I introduce author, journalist and classic FM presenter John Suchet.
Hello, Michael.
It's delightful to have you here, and you have, as I say, written now 8 books on Beethoven. So the question is, why Beethoven?
Well, the word that is often used that I don't like is obsession, obsessive, because somehow there's something not quite right about that. The word that I use is passion. I have a passion for this man's life and music that began, I suppose, around 50 years ago, sometime in my early 20s. I can't remember the exact moment. He kind of crept up on me, and suddenly, as I was a journalist, TV journalist all my life, but before that I was a failed musician. I wanted to be a professional musician, but fortunately for the world of music, I realised I didn't have the talent. But this man's music crept up on me, and I knew from then that it would not go away, it would only increase, and that is what's happened. There are other composers I will listen to, minor names like Mozart, Wagner, Haydn, but Beethoven just does it for me. I was highly educated musically at school because I loved it, to the extent that I wanted to turn professional, but as I say, I didn't have the talent, but that has stayed with me. I read music, I understand music. As you say, I play the trombone in those days to quite a high level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. How you enjoyed your time as well?
I think Charles Ray's right. Those 6 Australian premiers boycotting that meeting with the King, Queen, it's really ill-mannered.
Really ill-mannered. But, you know...
He's got cancer. He's being treated for cancer. He's going... It's an awful long way to go. It's just pathetic. They should grow up.
They should grow up. DH has just said clearing asylum backlog could see 62,000 more migrants recognised as refugees.
A small town.
They say these illegals are going to be granted asylum. That is a right to remain. This is absolutely wrong and criminal from the government. It means that dependents will also arrive. So this figure will jump to 250,000. That is a large city. All will be in social housing, benefits galore. Imagine all of these will have a pension for the rest of their lives and they've contributed nothing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, where are they going to live?
It sort of slipped under the net a bit, that story.
I know.
Isn't it?
Well, I know, because, and they're now trying to deny that they're going to put more migrants in hotels. They are going to do that. They're going to acquire more hotels, having told us they were going to shut them all down.
Graham.
They have no policy on migration.
Apparently not. They don't really care.
No.
Graham has got in touch. Morning, Graham. It's annoying that even GB News, we don't like to annoy you, Graham, even GB News ignore that us real Northerners, Geordies, he says, have a 2.5-hour drive to Manchester, but continue to bleat on about HS2 going to Crewe at Manchester. But that's precisely what Andrew said
I was
before.
making the point.
East-west.
Yeah. I was up in Newcastle recently, and a chum of mine was there, and to get to Liverpool took him 3.5 hours by train. And I thought then, this is where the train needs to be.
It's terribly serviced, but I mean...
East-west across the Pennines.
I grew up in Manchester, and that was a conversation that was going on 40 years ago, frankly. I used to drive on the M42 across to Leeds a lot.
We don't need to get from London to Birmingham quicker.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. It only takes an hour and a half anyway.
Yeah.
Right train.
Tim says, do you make your own cup of tea there, Bev, or do you have people doing it for us?
She's got staff. She's got staff. She clicks her finger, actually, below the desk. You can't see this. She clicks her finger and they know. And she has strict instructions on how the tea's to be made, the colour of it.
We make our...
special powdered milk.
Oh.
You've no idea.
Who has special tea bags at this table? Only one of us has special tea bags.
I have decaf.
That's because you've got a dodgy ticker into it. Isn't it a health reason?
It is. Yeah.
I do have my powdered milk, though, that's true. Richard has said the royals don't do themselves any favours by awarding dameships to the likes of divisive political figures like Jacinda Ardern. That was an award for globalist elite. Oh, I couldn't agree more,
She's now Dame.
Outrageous.
And she's a Republican, so why did she take a damehood?
Right, still to come, amazing story on the fact that vegan food might become normal in hospitals. Here's our forecast.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A much brighter day today for most of us. Sunny spells far and wide, still some showers around, particularly across some western parts. But actually, for many, it's a dry start to the day. We've got the last of Wednesday's rain clearing from the Northern Isles, and just some showers following in for Northern Ireland, parts of southern and western Scotland, Wales and the southwest. These showers will be hit and miss. In between, there'll be some sunshine. The best of the sunshine across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, and it will feel mild once again, but not quite as mild as Wednesday, so highs of 16 to 19 Celsius. There is the chance of some thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain moving into the far southeast by the end of the day, and we'll still have those showers affecting parts of central and western Scotland as well. But as you can see, plenty of clear spells as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland, mixture of clear spells and showers. 1 or 2 showers for Cumbria, parts of Wales and the southwest, but plenty of fine weather through central and eastern parts of the UK. Now, with clear skies widely overnight, it's going to be a cooler night compared with recent nights. A few mist and fog patches are possible, and some patchy cloud, particularly across western parts, especially of the hills. Otherwise, for many, it's a fine start to Friday. Temperatures of 8 to 12 Celsius typically first thing, and feeling pleasant enough in any early sunshine. But things are going to turn more unsettled. Initially for Northern Ireland and western Scotland, we'll see rain and wind arrive through the morning. The rain moves into Wales and the southwest, the rest of Scotland and eventually northern England, whilst the winds strengthen across many western and northwestern parts. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts for northwest Scotland, but it stays sunny with lighter winds in the southeast.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB.
We love. Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, 11 a.m. on Thursday, the 17th of October, live across the UK. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
So, breaking news this morning, the former One Direction singer and pop star Liam Payne has died, aged just 31 years old. His body was found outside of a hotel in Argentina after apparently falling from a third-floor balcony.
The budget tax rate, is it going to be the biggest tax-raising budget in our modern history? The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, is now facing resistance from within her own cabinet. Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, no less, has written to the Prime Minister to object to what she's trying to do in the budget to the country.
And health experts, so-called, are calling on the NHS to make vegan food standard in all of your hospitals. That's right. If I was sick, the last thing I'd want is a meat-free sausage roll.
Blimey. And is HS2 going north again? Ministers are apparently rethinking the HS2 train line, which could now run between London Euston and Crewe after all.
And do you think that Britain is the worst place to be a driver? Car insurance is rocketing, potholes are everywhere, and cases of road rage are going up too. What is your biggest complaint about Britain's roads?
And it's tonight, the countdown. Conservative leadership contenders Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch go head-to-head in a GB News special at 7 p.m. with our very own political editor, Chris Hope. Don't miss it.
The keen-eyed amongst you might have just noticed that those pictures of potholes were actually in Paris.
I thought that was the Arc de Triomphe.
Sack the producer. Listen, he works very hard.
Someone just said it's a globalist. Yes, but we'd want to talk about the potholes in this country. There are too many.
You know what the issue is? Because we were talking about the fact that car insurance here has gone up 12 times more than it has in France. So we'll let you off too. We know what you were trying to do there. Right, gbnews.com/your say. So let us know your thoughts this morning. First to the very latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It is just after 11 o'clock. We'll start with a roundup of that news that former One Direction singer Liam Payne is being remembered this morning for his kindness and his compassion after his death in Buenos Aires at the age of 31. The Trussell Trust, in the last hour or so, which he supported for 4 years, has praised the 31-year-old for helping to fund over 360,000 meals for those in need. Meanwhile, the X Factor has, in the last few minutes, posted on social media, you can see there on the screen, paying tribute to Liam Payne, where, of course, he rose to fame, saying he will leave a lasting legacy on the music industry. Dermot O'Leary, who hosted that show during Payne's time on it, has said he was central to One Direction's success and had an unbelievable and soulful voice. In other news, thousands of troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement signed by the Defence Secretary John Healey at a NATO summit in Brussels today. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British troops are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days, equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. Well, as NATO ministers are gathered in Brussels, the Defence Secretary said the new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of what he described as escalated global tensions.
The UK's unshakable commitment to NATO could never be more important. And at a time of growing Russian aggression and increasing wider threats, today we will make the commitment to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with a new plan alongside Estonia for our forces there. And we will make a commitment, a UK commitment, to bolstering the future of Europe's defences.
Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government's pushing to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council has estimated the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January of next year, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests the proceedings of those backlogs could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says it is committed to ending the use of asylum hotels, despite reports that the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. Kemi Badenoch says that her bid for the Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign, taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach in recent weeks. As the two contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary says the Tories need to regain voters that were lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick has outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to pre-pandemic levels could help a tax cut. Well, from 7 p.m. tonight, they will be making their pitches to Tory members in a special programme moderated by GB News political editor Christopher Hope. You can, of course, catch all the action live here on GB News 7 till 9 o'clock tonight in Decision Time, the race to lead. A breaking line to bring you from the Westminster Magistrates Court this hour. Former Metropolitan Police Officer David Carrick has appeared there facing a string of sex offences. The 48-year-old is accused of indecent assault, rape, sexual assault and coercive control against a woman. He's also charged with indecent assaults on a girl under the age of 14, dating back to the late 80s in Wiltshire. Carrick appeared via video link at Westminster Magistrates Court earlier, where he confirmed his name but gave no pleas. He'll appear again at the Old Bailey next month. Private sector landlords are calling on the Chancellor to give them urgent tax breaks to curb soaring rents and tackle the housing crisis. In a letter to Rachel Reeves, industry leaders have highlighted the uncertainty facing their sector as average advertised rents have hit record highs. They're warning that rental taxation is driving landlords to exit the market, undermining the very housing supplies needed to help tenants. It comes as the Chancellor is looking to raise £40 billion through tax hikes and spending cuts in the upcoming budget later this month. A new report claims the World Bank has lost track of billions in climate finance. Oxfam says up to $41 billion, nearly 40% of climate funding from 2017 to 2023, is unaccounted for in the bank's records. The report suggests there's no public trace of how or if the money was even spent on climate projects. The World Bank, though, hasn't yet commented on those findings from Oxfam. Primary schools across England are set to benefit from a £15 million funding boost aimed at expanding childcare options. The Department for Education's announced that schools can now apply for up to £150,000 to deliver 300 new or expanded nurseries. The initiative comes as demand is continuing to rise across the country, with over 300,000 children currently accessing 15 hours of free childcare a week. That's ahead of the full rollout of 30 hours from next September. Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says that new nurseries will target areas with the greatest need, with projections indicating a requirement for around 70,000 additional places. King Charles and Queen Camilla are heading to Australia for a shortened tour following His Majesty's cancer diagnosis earlier this year. Doctors advised curtailing that trip, cutting out a visit to New Zealand originally planned, instead adjusting other parts of the schedule. The King's also pausing his cancer treatment during the 11-day overseas visit, while down under, their schedule now includes a review of the Royal Australian Navy in Sydney and meetings with top cancer experts before continuing on to Samoa. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for another update in around half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning. The budget is round the corner.
Certainly is. The Telegraph front page today says it will be the biggest tax raiser in history, but it's really significant. 3 cabinet ministers have written to the Prime Minister objecting to what Rachel Reeves is proposing to do with cutting spending and raising taxes. We don't know about the taxes. Unusual, to say the least. Let's talk to the former Labour Minister, Ivor Kaplan. Ivor, morning. Of course, ministers have negotiations with chancellors in the run-up to a budget. They don't normally go over the head of the Chancellor and write to the Prime Minister, and then, conveniently, the letters are leaked. The Deputy Prime Minister, the Transport Secretary and the Justice Secretary. 3 women, in fact.
Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Bev. I hadn't actually seen all of that this morning. I have to say I've just had an opportunity to read what the Telegraph was saying in the last hour or so. Let me just say as a clear opening, there's about 2 weeks till we get to the point where Rachel will be on her feet to speak to the country, really, about that. And when that happens, I think it's important for us to reflect that there will be a series of decisions that need to be made by the Chancellor and, of course, the Prime Minister and the rest of the Cabinet. And, of course, people are able to put forward their own views, but that doesn't mean that that's going to come out in the end as something that the Cabinet will decide on. Now, this has been fairly well known over the years. You can go back over a number of different times under Mrs. Thatcher, under Tony Blair, and you can see where these things happened.
Yeah, but Ivor, can I just interrupt you? This is the Deputy Prime Minister, no less, objecting to what the Chancellor's doing in a letter to the Prime Minister. I don't recall that happening before a budget, particularly a budget of a government that's only been in power for 3 months.
Oh, I have to say to you there, Andrew, I think that's not correct. There have been plenty of disagreements over the years. At this point, I'm only saying at this point because obviously there is going to be changes to matters in the next 2 weeks, and it's quite a long 2 weeks. But I accept entirely that when you've not been in power for 14 years, that these type of things that happened previously under both Tories and Labour governments, these type of things do happen, and they need to be resolved, of course. But that does mean that other people have their views.
Thank you, Ivor. And we've had your views, and we're short and sweet. We've got a very busy news day. Ivor Kaplan there. Thank you so much for joining us. Moving on, Liam Payne, star of One Direction. If you're just turning on, he's died, unfortunately. He fell from a third-floor balcony at a hotel in Buenos Aires. He was sharing videos of himself on social media just before his death. Here he is.
Morning, everybody. Here's a little video of me. It's rude to put hats on a table.
Sorry.
Is this your hat?
Yeah.
Children. It's a lovely day here.
So he looked perfectly normal. He didn't look happy. Didn't look unhappy, did he? In the last hour, we've also got audio of the emergency call made last night by the hotel staff where Liam Payne was staying. We've translated some of it into English for you. Here it is.
We need you to send someone urgently. I don't know if the guest is in danger. He's in a room with a balcony. And we're afraid he could do something that threatens his life.
Very sad, because he had been behaving erratically, and we know he'd had a long history of problems with drink and drugs. Let's talk to the legendary agent and manager, showbiz manager, Jonathan Shalit. Jonathan, it seems this has happened. He was a boy band star, an enormous star. He's struggled since he's been out of the limelight, and that is not an untypical story.
No, you're right, Andrew. You know, it happens with football. It happens with many people who have massive success when they're young, not just in music. You know, in sports, of course, you see it over and over again with young sporting stars. So when they get to a point, you know, comparatively young, can be 30, and their sporting careers can come to an end, and they don't know how to conduct the rest of their lives. I think Liam, of course, became a solo star himself, and I think sold out Madison Square Garden. So Liam is a touch different. He was continuing a very successful solo career. I mean, clearly, from what we're all reading and hearing, there were a lot of troubles in his personal life. However, I guess at a moment like this, you kind of celebrate what he achieved, and what he achieved was extraordinary. And he leaves behind a 7-year-old son, which is, you know, deeply tragic for both the child as the child grows up without a father, and for Cheryl, who's a hugely decent woman who would have totally embraced Liam being in her son's life, or their son's life. And so that the massive sadness they must be feeling today, one cannot even begin to imagine. And so the whole thing is just a tragedy.
OK, thank you, Jonathan. We just wanted a couple of moments to reflect on that there. Thank you for your experience in that area. It is so sad. And like you say, the most important thing is that he's got a 7-year-old son.
I know I shouldn't say it, but I'm not always surprised when I read these stories.
No, I know what you mean. There's a terrible inevitability about it, isn't there?
Now, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris appeared on Fox News. Rather unusual move by Harris, because it's, of course, a Republican-supporting territory. I don't think she did very well.
Well, it was unusual. At the moment, immigration was raised. Things got a little bit heated. It's a big issue over there. Here she is.
The first bill, practically within hours of taking the oath, was a bill to fix our immigration system.
Yes, ma'am. It was called the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021.
Exactly.
It was essentially a pathway to citizenship for the...
Yes, ma'am. May I finish responding, please? I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
Joining us now is Professor of International Studies, Professor David Dunn. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Good morning. Well, she didn't come across terribly well in these interviews, did she?
Well, that's your opinion. My opinion differs, unsurprisingly, perhaps. I thought that what she did in this interview was demonstrate that she could respond to questions without it being scripted, like they were in the debate, that she could hold her own, she could set her own agenda, and she could demonstrate that she could go back and forth. I thought she landed a number of points and made a lot of good responses. But I think more interestingly is the fact that she chose to go on this program at all. And it shows that she needs to respond to the fact that she's not doing as well in the polls as she hoped to do at this point in time. So she's willing to take risks, to go on Fox, to actually answer the critics that she hasn't done this sort of interview, and that she is out there putting forward a change agenda. And the crucial thing is she used this platform to say that actually I'm going to draw a line under the Biden administration, that I will bring new and fresh ideas, that I will bring in ideas from the Republicans who are supporting me and from business, and that I'm from California. Haven't spent my entire life in Washington, and therefore I will be looking for new ideas that aren't necessarily.
Well, she didn't have any.
Yeah.
She didn't have any new ideas. She just said, "I've got new ideas," but she didn't say what they are.
Well, I mean, there are a number of ideas that she's put forward on a variety of things, but she is in a difficult position.
Go on,
being
give me
Vice
one.
President in
Go
Parliament
on, David, give me one. Give me one. What did she say that was new?
What did she say that was new? Well, she talks about the need to actually improve the border. And
That's
she's
not
criticised
new.
the border
That's
question.
not new, David.
Well, okay.
That's not new. And what's the practical solution for improving the border? She's been in charge of immigration for the last 3.5 years, and it's failed manifestly on her watch.
She hasn't been in charge of immigration. That's a line that Donald Trump puts out, but it's not actually the facts on the issue. The facts on the issue were that she was in charge of actually trying to look at the systemic reasons for the desire for people to leave Latin America, Central America, and move north, and trying to address those questions rather than being in charge of the immigration issue as such. But in terms of actually what she did say on what was new was interesting. The polls show that on the question of who is the change candidate, they prefer Trump. And therefore, what she's done is trying to actually draw a line between her and the Biden administration and demonstrate that she is a change candidate too. So I thought that was interesting that she chose to do that.
But she didn't. And I think also it was incredibly naive to go on Fox News, where we know the audience is going to be primarily Trump supporters, and spend most of the interview criticising Donald Trump. That was all she had. Whenever they questioned her, all she had basically was, well, at least I'm not Donald Trump. That, you know, if you sum up a lot of her answers, she was attacking Trump and attacking him and attacking him. But kind of on a personal level, not necessarily on his policies.
Well, I think a lot of these issues are personal. Actually, it comes down to the character of these individuals. And actually, this is an issue, this is a presidential election where the policies are secondary to the personalities who are involved. Because what we have is two very different individuals. And she said that actually she thought that Trump was unfit, that he had criticized the American people. And the threats of retribution that he does are not going to bring the country together, as she plans to do. What they are, it will divide the country, and he's talking about using the military to round people up, his enemies, and therefore they are character questions, and therefore the character of the candidates for office becomes an issue in itself.
OK, all right, thank you so much. Professor of International Studies, Professor David Dunn there. Right.
Up next.
What do former footballer Gary Neville and our very own Andrew Pearce have in common? Remember, Gary Neville was the man that helped get Keir Starmer into office. Well, it turns out that him and Andrew agree on something. We'll tell you what it is.
Who'd have thought it?
In just a minute. This is Britain's Newsroom on GBNews. Don't go anywhere.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Right, we're having beans this morning.
Beans for breakfast. There's no better breakfast, is there?
I like beans on toast for breakfast.
So do I. I would actually call myself a baked beans connoisseur.
Would you? Well, we can put you to the test. Tell us what the story is.
The story is, you might think beans, you might think Heinz. Heinz means beans.
Beans means Heinz.
Beans means Heinz. Heinz means beans. Who knows? So, of all of the supermarket baked beans, it is actually the Aldi supermarket version, this version over here, which came out on top. The Bramwell's baked beans, 76% on the taste test.
And they're much cheaper as well.
Much cheaper. Households can save, if you're buying 2 cans a week, £100 a year buying the Aldi version of these baked beans. So we thought we're going to do a blind taste test this morning to see.
So we've got the Aldi beans, we've got M&S beans, and we've got beans Heinz. So I think number 2 is the best one.
Yeah, I agree.
Right,
2 came first best to me.
So the Heinz is number 3.
Interesting.
Which was the worst one?
Which is the worst one, which is the ones... Actually, I'll buy it home.
Do you know what? That's just proven it. M&S was number 1. And Aldi was number 2, which was our favourite as well.
I said M&S.
Yeah, and we both said Aldi.
We did say Aldi. I have to be honest, I was not expecting that.
I told you. This is a hill I will die on. These are the beans that I get at home and I love them.
At university, you get the tin that's half that size, and it was 21p for the store ones and 23p for Heinz baked beans. And as I say, the key was in the thickness of the sauce and how hard the beans were. They
actually are really nice.
Stunning.
I am really surprised, and we buy more than 2 cans a week, so it saved me a couple of £100.
We get through 2 cans.
So you like the Aldi
ones?
I like the Aldi ones. I'm shocked.
They're a lot cheaper. Yeah.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark Meets and My Take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It is 11:23. This is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. Now, Sam Fowles and Tory MP, a former Tory MP. I'm sorry, Steve.
Oh,
sting every
she's
time you
rubbing
hear
it in.
that.
So former Tory.
But
there's so many of you.
We were trailing. They're lost, Steve. Now, we were trailing before the break the fact that Andrew Pearce has something in common with ex-footballer, Man United, Mancunian boy Gary Neville. Now, yesterday, we were talking about the England manager and the fact that he's a German,
Thomas
Tuchel. And guess what? Gary Neville has been talking, we can watch the clip, saying how he agrees. We didn't explicitly say he'd agree with you, Andrew, that I think he'd rather die than say that. But here it is. Here's what he said.
I'm shocked. I'll be honest with you, I'm shocked. I'm shocked tonight that England have appointed... I don't want this to be about Thomas Tuchel. It's nothing to do with Thomas Tuchel. I'm shocked tonight that England have appointed a international coach.
I mean, listen, I just think a nation like England, you know, I think it's embarrassing that we as a nation are saying we need a foreign coach to make us successful.
Brilliant, Jamie Carragher there.
That was my view. I mean, I know nothing about football, Steve, I've got to be honest.
Oh, well, we're on the same page.
Exactly.
I know almost nothing. The only thing I've known for 14 years is that I support Wycombe Wanderers.
Right.
But you know about the
My dad used to play for Wycombe Wanderers.
Did he really?
But we've got this Premier League, which is one of the wealthiest in the world, and no money comes from that to enable us to develop our own homegrown manager.
I feel sorry for Thomas Tuchel, actually, because he's had to say, you know, I'm going to earn the right to... How did he put it? To see that people will see I'm proud to be the manager. I feel sorry for him, particularly when we beat Germany, because we must beat Germany, surely.
Does it matter, Sam, that he's not English?
I think in the sense that you've been talking about, yes, because it does say, look, we've got this, we're ploughing all of this money into the English game, and we need to be bringing up English coaches and developing English coaches. In the short term, surely what you want to do, if you want to win games, you've got to bring in the best manager, and this is a guy that seems to join a team and immediately that team wins the Champions Cup. So that was a rugby reference. Wins the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup, and so clearly this guy's a really good football manager. He's excellent at his job, and I think in the short term, maybe that's a good idea.
I think it's embarrassing.
It is, and I think actually Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher really summed up the fact that it's demoralising for the British wannabe managers, English wannabe managers, who don't get that opportunity. What does that say about our pathway to success in this country?
It must be right.
Talking about pathways to success, Reform are doing incredibly well, Steve Baker, in the polls. More popular now than Labour with the voters.
Yeah.
What do you make of that and why?
I think it's quite dangerous for the country, actually, because I think Reform is a strategic mistake. Look, the reality is they've got 5 MPs, so about the same size, I think, now as the DUP. So in terms of numbers in the House of Commons, I'm sorry, they're irrelevant. Labour will get its business, and which way Reform votes is never going to matter in this Parliament.
But we have democracy, and that's why we like having minor parties.
And that's lovely. Yeah, and that's lovely and super, and they'll be important. What Nigel says will dominate the headlines and will be important. But when it comes to actually what is the business in the House of Commons and which way does the vote go, they'll be immaterial. Now, if what people want is good quality centre-right government, I'm afraid what they need to do is save the Conservative Party. And I know your viewers won't like me saying that, but I think this is a massive strategic mistake. I think what Nigel Farage wanted was a hung Parliament with the Liberal Democrats having the balance of power. They would have insisted on PR. Now, if we'd had proportional representation, Nigel Farage and Richard Tyson Reform would have forever had the Conservative Party held closely so that they could influence what we did in government. But it failed, didn't it? Because Labour got a landslide, so now they've got to plan to replace us. If they double the number of MPs they have, how many general elections will it take? It pushes it so far out into...
But if 100 days in...
Yeah, but if this poll is showing already that the country is looking at them in a different light.
Yeah.
More positively, partly because of the negatives for Keir Starmer. Yeah. I mean, they're in second place in 100 Labour seats, Steve. Yeah. They could win those seats.
Yeah. Well, I hope they do beat Labour. But the problem is, suppose that Reform did become a party of government. Have a look at what the Institute for Fiscal Studies said about their fiscal pledges. It was totally unrealistic. It was fantasy. And this is the problem, is that any political party that's just a protest party can engage in fantasy politics, and that will always be attractive to people.
But they have to start as a protest party, Sam Fowles, and then go from there. They have to start somewhere.
Yeah, but I think starting by proposing an economic plan that would have crashed the economy on the first day, and Steve and I agree on this. I think that should be the start and the end of Reform. That should have the country should have said, look, these guys are jokers. Let's not hear anything more from them. But realistically, Reform have been playing politics on easy for the entire time they've existed. You know, they have got constant favourable coverage, well above their actual appeal to their original appeal to the nation.
Nigel Farage getting constant favourable coverage. He's public enemy number 1 in the mainstream media.
Yeah, well, look, the mainstream media, the BBC particularly, was Nigel Farage's biggest cheerleader. I mean, he was on Question Time. There was a period when he was on Question Time more often than anyone except David Dimbleby.
And heckled by the audience the whole way through.
He was given this platform when he was realistically a total nobody and was able to repeatedly just establish himself in politics.
But he got Brexit. Brexit, the biggest political movement in our lifetime, was because of Nigel Farage.
It was because David Cameron chickened out.
No, I feel so strongly about this because I remember how David.
But just deal with the idea that he was a poster boy with the BBC. That's ridiculous.
Well, I don't think the BBC meant to make him a poster boy. But actually, listening to Sam's argument, there is a point that they did platform him a lot and give him a lot of voice.
That's what a democracy does.
Well, yeah. I mean, was it their duty? I mean, it's a thing to argue about. I don't think we should no-platform people. But now that I've understood the point that Sam is making, that they gave him a lot of voice through platform, well, I can see the case you're making. Whether they should or shouldn't, well, they probably should. But yeah... I mean,
delivering Brexit?
Oh, yeah, delivering Brexit.
Why are you bristling?
I bristle because...
Was it you?
No, it was Conservative MPs. Look, David Cameron did not expect to win the 2015 general election.
No.
The reason that they agreed to have a referendum was because 81 Conservative MPs went through the voting lobbies for it, a vote which I whipped.
Yeah.
And that made it impossible for David Cameron to refuse. If he'd had 81 MPs in outright rebellion constantly, because he'd refused to give us that referendum, it would never have happened.
So do you wish you got more credit for Brexit than Farage?
No, I think I've got enough that people hate me roundly already. The truth is that lots of us contributed to it, for good or ill. I think for good. Nigel obviously was an extremely important factor in it, but pick up those Tim Shipman books and flag where Nigel Farage's name appears, and flagged where certain other figures' names appear, and I bet I can tell you who's got the more flags in the history of Brexit.
That's interesting.
I don't know who Tim Shipman is.
He's a Sunday Times political journalist who's written books all about the battle for Brexit.
Yeah, 4 volumes, all out war, fallout.
Yeah,
no
they're
way
fascinating.
Well, yeah, but I still think that Labour the left have always been sleepy about the risk from reform.
Yeah.
They thought they were just going to sweep up the right
normal
vote,
working
and that's
people.
not the case.
Normal working people
Absolutely.
don't want the sort of
What's
top
a
end.
working person?
People the communities
people.
the communities that I came from. My dad was a building site carpenter. My granddad was a toolmaker.
Oh no!
And
not
my stepfather was an open cast mine worker. And people in those working class communities, normal people, care about normal things. They don't want the kind of nonsense which actually Labour MPs preoccupy themselves.
But Steve, the danger for the Tories is that they assume the pendulum will swing back, particularly if this government continues.
They can't assume that,
because the pendulum may not come back. To the Tories at all.
Absolutely. No, that's absolutely right. We've got to earn the right to be heard because we really messed up through conduct and failing to deliver on migration. And no one can take the least thing for granted in the Tory party, no.
Well, we haven't taken you for granted. I'm sorry it was short and sweet, gentlemen. Sam, good to see you. Steve Baker.
We wanted to get you on Hereditary Peers.
We've run out of time. We've had a very, very busy show this morning. I'm so sorry about this.
Yeah.
Right, here's Sam Francis with your headlines.
Very good morning to you. It is just after 11:30, and we'll start with a roundup of the news that tributes are continuing to pour in this morning for Liam Payne, as fans and fellow stars remember the former One Direction singer after his death last night at the age of 31. His career soared during his time in One Direction, but in recent years he spoke openly about struggles with mental health and addiction, admitting to hitting rock bottom. Social media has been flooded with tributes in recent hours, with many sharing their memories of his iconic performances and personal struggles. We've also just heard in the last few minutes that Britain's Got Talent, another show related to Simon Cowell, who of course was one of the judges during Liam Payne's time on the X Factor, they have announced that they will be postponing auditions today for the pay tribute for the death of the former One Direction singer. A spokesperson saying their thoughts are with Liam's family and friends and all who loved him. At this stage, producers not saying when those auditions for Britain's Got Talent will resume. In other news, thousands of UK troops are being put on standby to deploy to Estonia's border with Russia, part of a crucial new agreement signed by Defence Secretary John Healey. It means the Army's 4th Brigade will remain on high readiness to defend against rising tensions from the ongoing war in Ukraine. Currently, about 1,000 British soldiers are in Estonia, and if called upon, the 4th Brigade could arrive within 10 days, equipped with advanced tanks and missile systems. As NATO ministers are gathered in Brussels, the Defence Secretary John Healey said earlier that the new deal will enhance the group's defences in the face of escalating global threats. Thousands of migrants could be granted asylum in the UK as the government's pushing to clear a huge backlog of applications. The Refugee Council estimates the number of pending asylum claims could reach almost 120,000 by January, following Labour's decision to scrap the Rwanda plan. New analysis suggests that processing that backlog could see over 62,000 more people recognised as refugees in the UK. It comes as Downing Street says it's committed to ending the use of the asylum hotels, despite reports the Home Office may reopen some that were previously closed. And Kemi Badenoch says her bid for Conservative leadership is a grassroots campaign, taking aim at her rival Robert Jenrick's more media-focused approach. As the two contenders compete to replace Rishi Sunak, the Shadow Housing Secretary has said that the Tories need to regain voters that they lost to Reform and the Liberal Democrats. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick's outlined his vision for a smaller state and lower taxes, arguing that returning the spend on benefits to pre-pandemic levels could help a tax cut. Well, from 7 p.m. tonight, they'll be making their pitches to Tory members in a special programme here on GB News, moderated by our political editor, Christopher Hope. You can catch all of those lines from that special programme between 7 and 9 o'clock here on GB News. New weight loss jabs touted as a potential boost for Britain's economy by getting people back into work may also help treat alcohol addiction. Researchers in Chicago found that drugs like Ozempic reduced intoxication rates by 50% in individuals with alcohol use. Experts believe the jabs, which target both appetite and brain functions related to addiction, could be a promising new treatment for both alcohol and opioid addiction. And finally, just a quick breaking line to bring you from the Home Office. We're hearing that the UK has just hit Russia with its largest sanctions package yet, targeting, we understand, 18 oil tankers, 4 gas ships linked to Putin's so-called shadow fleet. That comes, of course, as President Volodymyr Zelensky is currently in Brussels at that NATO summit that I mentioned earlier. Among the NATO members, Lithuania, one of those members, has in the last few minutes said during that summit that they believe Ukraine should be immediately instated as a member of NATO. So we're just hearing that latest line from the Reuters news agency. We'll keep across it, bring you more on that as we get it. Now, though, it's time for a quick look at the finance markets.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And here's a look at the markets this morning. The pound will buy you $1.2982 and €1.1961 euros. The price of gold, £2,604 and 1 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 8,350 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Up at noon. Good afternoon, Britain, with Emily and Tom. Afternoon both, not quite morning. What's on the show?
Yeah, morning now. It will be afternoon.
Yes, thank you.
We next grace your television screens. But it's a busy show today. Of course, we're going to be looking ahead to the enormous leadership event being hosted by GB News this evening.
Yes, it's going to be very exciting indeed to see what the members have to say as well, see who they're keen on. Is Kemi just inching it at the moment, or has Robert Jenrick already taken the lead?
I'm just looking forward to seeing them sort of being put on the spot, because I think that's what's needed in this contest. It needs a bit of zhuzhing up.
Yeah, we need to see what they really think about all the important issues that are going on.
Can you say who you would prefer?
I actually would not say, because...
Does that not feel professional?
I don't know.
Well, it's not even that. Even if you asked me off air, I'd say...
You don't really have an opinion. You're not bothered about either of them.
I feel a bit like that.
Yeah.
I can't get really worked up about either of them.
I can see strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. I think Robert Jenrick seems hungrier for it.
Yeah.
But I think
desperate.
But I think Kemi Badenoch has this sort of... I think she's got a higher ceiling and a lower floor. I can see her sort of doing a truss, or I can see her doing very well.
Yeah.
Like, she's got a much wider spectrum, whereas Jenrick, I think, is probably more steady.
She could be some high highs and some low lows, couldn't it, really?
Well, what's important is that we have a functioning and strong opposition.
Certainly need one.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I guess the question is, who do you think could do that job better? Who could hold the government to account better?
And it's a very difficult job.
Very
Be a
difficult
good leader
job.
of the opposition.
So it may not be whoever wins the leadership now takes the Conservatives into the next election, but they do need to provide a strong opposition. So who is that? Jenrick or Kemi? People will decide. Of course, we're going to be talking about this tragic death of Liam Payne. I was a huge fan of One Direction. I think everyone our age was sort of growing up with them. We're also going to be revealing quite a distressing 911 call that some of the staff at the hotel took, who were very concerned by his behaviour. It is quite distressing, but we'll be showing that. Also going to be talking about this rather bizarre story that Oxfam has revealed, that up to $41 billion in World Bank climate finance is completely unaccounted for.
That is
funny
shocking.
that.
Shocking.
Completely unaccounted for.
These wretched organisations like that, I mean...
Where's it going? Have you got to the bottom of it?
No, but I think it's a massive issue.
And we are going to be pouring billions more.
Of
course we are.
And we shouldn't.
It is extraordinary.
Taxpayers should not be involved with that organisation.
And if we have more time, also North Korea. I mean, it sounds like something out of some Hollywood movie, but they are genuinely training up troops now and sending them to Europe. North Korean soldiers are going to be on the ground in Ukraine fighting for the Russians. It's that axis of these countries coming together.
Axis of evil.
Pretty alarming, that.
Gosh.
Actually.
Yeah.
Are we tiptoeing into some sort of great power balance where we're seeing North Korea, China, Russia, Iran versus everyone else?
Could all change, of course, if Trump wins the election.
Yes.
OK, Emily, Tom, at midday, thank you so much. But still to come here, heaven forbid you find yourself ill in hospital, but if you were feeling terrible and you were served tofu, whole grains, nuts, not even proper cheese, just vegan, yep, that's what we might be looking at. Don't go anywhere. Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A much brighter day today for most of us. Sunny spells far and wide. Still some showers around, particularly across some western parts. But actually, for many, it's a dry start to the day. We've got the last of Wednesday's rain clearing from the Northern Isles, and just some showers following in for Northern Ireland, parts of southern and western Scotland, Wales and the southwest. These showers will be hit and miss. In between, there'll be some sunshine. The best of the sunshine across the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England, and it will feel mild once again, but not quite as mild as Wednesday, so highs of 16 to 19 Celsius. There is the chance of some thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain moving into the far southeast by the end of the day, and we'll still have those showers affecting parts of central and western Scotland as well. But as you can see, plenty of clear spells as we go into the evening. Northern Ireland, mixture of clear spells and showers. 1 or 2 showers for Cumbria, parts of Wales and the southwest, but plenty of fine weather through central and eastern parts of the UK. Now, with clear skies widely overnight, it's going to be a cooler night compared with recent nights. A few mist and fog patches are possible, and some patchy cloud, particularly across western parts, especially of the hills. Otherwise, for many, it's a fine start to Friday. Temperatures of 8 to 12 Celsius typically first thing, and feeling pleasant enough in any early sunshine. But things are going to turn more unsettled. Initially for Northern Ireland and western Scotland, we'll see rain and wind arrive through the morning. The rain moves into Wales and the southwest, the rest of Scotland and eventually northern England, whilst the winds strengthen across many western and northwestern parts. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts for northwest Scotland, but it stays sunny with lighter winds in the southeast.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, should the NHS go vegan to save the planet? We are joined by biochemical engineer and meat advocate Ivor Cummings and dietitian for the Vegan Society, Emily McKee. Good morning to you both. Emily, let's start with you, if we can. Why should the NHS feed poorly people vegan food?
Hi, so thank you for having me. We know from the research that we've had recently that there's a real role for plant-based diets, and particularly whole food plant-based diets, in preventative healthcare, particularly reducing the incidences of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. There's been some research by the Office of Health Economics recently, alongside the Vegan Society, that's found that a transition to plant-based diets in the UK could save the NHS £60 billion per year, and that's due to the reduction in those chronic diseases that are often associated with diet.
OK, Ivor Cummings, why is that wrong?
Well, yeah, Bev, essentially meat, fish and eggs are superfoods. It's well documented, the massive amount of nutrient density that's in them. And also Homo sapiens, no paleoanthropologist would ever deny this, evolved from the eating of meat. If you want to Google the expensive tissue hypothesis, It's clear as crystal. So meat, fish, and eggs are fundamental to human health. They bring a massive amount of nutrients that you can't get as readily bioavailable in plant foods, though plant foods are okay. And if I had any illness, I'd make sure I was stocking up on those nutrient-dense, Homo sapiens appropriate foods, without question. The research mentioned there is associational. So associational research is the lowest bar on the research ladder. They're correlation, not causation, full of confounding. But when you look at the biomedical, when you look at the metabolic science, and you look at the real data, meat, fish, and eggs are superfoods.
Emily, so this isn't based in scientific fact. This is just in this sort of ideology, this idea that wouldn't it be lovely for the planet if we all just ate plants?
Not at all. So it's very true that there is a hierarchy of scientific evidence. But what we do often find with nutritional evidence, obviously there's a lot of different factors that play into people's lives that, as has been mentioned, can kind of confound those results. But with studies, even if these are studies that are sort of associational, as you've said, so there may be cohort studies, they're looking at groups of people over time, there's still a lot of validity in that evidence. And particularly if there's a lot of studies that are pointing in the same direction, and we're finding that there's a strong and growing body of evidence to support the health benefits of plant-based diets, and particularly foods such as nuts and seeds, whole grains, which are associated with improvements in life expectancy and decreased rates of disease. So we're seeing a growing body of evidence, and it's actually the volume of evidence as well as the quantity supporting that.
Is it as simple as that, though, Ivor? Is it the fact that maybe people who are eating meat are eating a lot of processed meat, rubbish food, processed food full of sugars and unnecessary oils? Is that why these results come up in the types of surveys that Emily's talking about?
Yeah, one of the biggest scams is called the healthy user bias. So people who have listened to the advice of the last 50 years, the people who are health conscious, right, in every way, they tend to eat more of the foods they're told to eat. So you get a spurious signal. But the reality is, in the last 50 years, clear as crystal, red meat consumption per capita has gone down, while vegetable oils and other plant-extracted foods essentially have gone through the roof. And we have an explosion of chronic disease. So you only need to glance at one graph like that, and the idea that we switch away from wholesome, nutrient-dense, Homo sapiens appropriate foods that we've eaten forever, right, and move over to new proposed foods, you can see that it's totally specious. It's kind of farcical.
OK, all right, thank you both. Great to see you. Biochemical engineer Ivor Cummins and dietitian for the Vegan Society, Emily McKee. Let us know your thoughts.
If you're in hospital, you're miserable enough already, without being told you've got to have a plant burger.
What you want is good quality meat, though. I want it to be grown in this country. I don't want it to be flown thousands of miles. I want it to have good fats and less carbohydrate and less sugar.
Or your mates or your family to bring in some decent food.
Right, let us know your thoughts. Yeah, well, that's what you have to do, don't you? Up next.
Parliament's first bionic lord has been sworn in this morning. A remarkable man. More on that to come. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, Georgia. Your story is incredible. Just remind us of it. You quit running in, was it 2017? Because I mean, to be quite frank, your body was knackered, you had injuries, you thought you couldn't go on anymore. But then you started running again at Parkrun in 2022. And of course, this summer at the Olympics, you won bronze.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, it has been a bit of a journey. And yeah, there was a period of time where I stopped running completely. And then Parkrun was just something I got into with my friends, my family, just local community. And I started to see the improvements that led me to get back in contact with my old coach, and just worked my way back up to elite level running and got a bronze medal this summer in Paris.
Did you ever think that would happen when you were beginning to take part in parkruns again? Did you ever think you'd be winning bronze in the 1500 metres at the Olympics?
No, not at all. It would have been absolutely bonkers, I think, to think that at the time. It was just building my way up, but it was all about finding happiness in running again. And that's really what parkrun does, I think, really well.
And can you just tell us and the audience what had happened to you in 2017?
So I had been like a good junior athlete. I had gone over to the US on a track scholarship at university, and I just experienced so many different injuries. So various stress fractures in my shins, and I just graduated and just thought there's no way I can run anymore. So took a big break, and then over the past few years, I just got back into running slowly, built it up, and parkrun is just something that is on every Saturday. So many parks across the UK, very accessible, free. So it was just a really good way to get back into a fun but semi-level of competitive running.
The People's Channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tonight as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tonight. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. So, Parliament's first bionic lord, as he's known, has pledged to battle the health secretaries to raise awareness of sepsis and improve prosthetics for amputees.
He's Craig McKinley, who was a Tory MP. He's the first quadruple amputee to join the House of Lords or to join Parliament in any form. He was sworn into the Lords earlier this morning. Take a listen, there he is.
I, Craig, Lord McKinley of Richborough, do swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
And I think...
And then, of course, he's signing in there with those extraordinary arms.
Amazing, isn't it? He had both legs and arms amputated after contracting sepsis. It must have been very emotional for him this morning, that happening. You know, you think
and
when
his
you've
wife
been
and
through...
daughter would have been there looking
When you've
on.
been through something like that, sometimes it's those lines in the sand when you realise that you've crossed into a new era in what's been such a difficult journey. So congratulations to Craig. We just wanted to...
And he was a terrific MP, and he'll be an asset to the House of Lords because disability is not represented properly anywhere in Parliament.
Absolutely. And also the issue of sepsis, which is something that affects more people than we would realise.
Exactly.
Right, we've had a good week. Is it Thursday?
It is.
Thank goodness for that. That is it from us for this week. But we leave you in the very capable hands of Emily and Tom.
See you next week.
See you then.
Thank you very much, indeed, Bevan, Andrew. Coming up, tributes are, of course, flooding in after the tragic death of the One Direction star Liam Payne. Will also reveal a rather distressing 911 call at the hotel where he died just before.
And also, we learned today that $41 billion in climate finance, international climate finance, is unaccounted for. Where on earth has all of this money gone? Is it being used properly, or has it been snuffled down some trouser legs? Also, the North Korean armed forces are being deployed in Europe. Yes, they're helping Putin in Ukraine. What does that mean for us? All of that to come after this.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. A brighter day today for most of us and fine with that, but some showers are still knocking about, especially across western parts because of an old occluded front that's moving in here. Another weather front's clearing from Shetland and there's still heavy rain continuing here, but that will tend to ease off into the afternoon with some cloud remaining. Otherwise, plenty of sunny spells across the rest of the UK, and the best of any sunshine will be across the northeast of the mainland of Scotland, eastern and southeastern England. Further west, a bit more cloud and some showers, but feeling pleasant enough with light winds and highs in any sunny spells of 17 or 18 Celsius. Then moving through the evening, any showers tend to fade away for a time, although they will continue across western Scotland as the sun goes down, drier towards the east with some late clear spells. And for Northern Ireland as well, plenty of fine weather as we end the afternoon and go into the evening. England and Wales, largely clear and dry, just 1 or 2 remaining showers there for Wales. Temperatures at 6 o'clock around 13 or 14 Celsius. Then, many places drier for a time overnight and under clear spells, with a lot of moisture on the ground still. Fairly widespread mist and fog will form, particularly across the Midlands, eastern and southern England, and some patchy hill fog further north. Temperatures dipping to the mid to high single figures, but it is going to be a murky start to the day. Some poor visibility could cause some issues on the roads during the morning. That mist and fog slow to clear in places, but by mid-morning I think it will be lifting into cloud and clearing. Some decent sunny spells then for parts of the Midlands, eastern and southeastern England. Further west the cloud builds, rain moves in, and it turns very windy in northwest Scotland.